I must admit, when people overwhelmingly suggested I cover trip-hop drums in this tutorial series, I was confused, because honestly, a trip-hop tutorial should be short and simple. Here, let me give you the tutorial I expected to make. Trip-hop drums came about when entire beats were lifted off vinyl and simply looped under songs. So let's do the same thing using factory soundbank loops, like this one from the Bomb Squad. Now I'll do two classic trip-hop techniques. I'll pull the loop out for part of the second measure, and I'll place two razor marks on the last measure, one on the last beat, and one just before the first beat. Then I'll juggle the loop by shortening the clip and duplicating it twice. Let's take a listen with this track that I have. That's all there is to it. But when people were requesting a trip-hop tutorial, I don't think they were requesting this. So I want to make this next point very clear. Loops are 100% okay to use. And don't let people tell you otherwise. Despite their stigma, loops are the sound of trip-hop drums. I would take it as the ultimate compliment if everyone stopped watching this tutorial right now and just went and made trip-hop using this method.
You're still here? It's over.
Alright, I get it. You want to understand the lo-fi, gritty sound of trip-hop and make your own loops. Okay, we'll do that. But just don't ever feel like that first method is cheating or unprofessional, because it's not. Okay, trip-hop happens in the slow tempo ranges between 60 to 90 BPM. Today we'll work at 74. Let's make a custom kit by creating a Kong and clearing it out. For the kick drum, I want a trashy kick with a deep boom to it. Let's actually revisit a technique from our Deep House tutorial by using one slice from a Rex loop found in the Abstract Hip Hop folder. I'll expand the loop and drag the first slice onto pad 1 of Kong. That covers the trash, but let's enhance the boom. In previous tutorials, I've shown you how to layer drum sounds in many different ways. Let's cover yet another method today by expanding Kong's drum and effects section and clicking Add Layer on our Nano sampler module. You can see our row is now twice as high with an extra space waiting for our next sample. It's the sampler equivalent of an in-and-out double-double. So let's double-click this second layer and browse other Rex slices, this time from the Down South folder. Let's do the same process for the snare drums. In the Hip Hop Loops folder, there's a beat called Black Talon, which has a nice trashy sound. And just like our kick drum, let's also make this one a double-double by adding a layer and bringing in a little woody sound to this snare. I'll go for the snare sound in Peach Hat, found among the Abstract Hip Hop Loops. I can adjust the volume blend, turning our Peach Hat layer up by adjusting its individual level control. Let's put a ride cymbal up in the corner of our pads. Nothing fancy needed here, just Ride 2 Rare in the Red Rum Samples folder. I also want a shaker sound to fill in some rhythmic top end. So far we've been using Rex slices, but let's place a whole Rex loop onto pad 15, like these Kashishi loops. Now, every time I press the pad, we get our whole loop in perfect time. At this point, it's worth talking about the sound of trip-hop drums. These samples are cool, but trip-hop drums have a quality of being under a blanket that's in a very large echoing room. It's a weird texture that gives trip-hop a lot of its vibe. In fact, the effects processing of trip-hop samples is arguably more important than the sample sounds themselves. To create that very large echoing room part of the sound, let's choose the room reverb on Kong's bus effects. I want the biggest size room we can get with a pretty long reverb decay. And because we're on the bus effects, I'll max out the wet-dry balance. Any one of our pads can now be sent to this effect by selecting the drum and dialing up its bus effects send knob. Send just a little signal and the effect is more subtle. Send a lot and the effect is more noticeable. The reverb on our snare should be noticeable. One last key adjustment. If I dial the width knob all the way back, our reverb will go from a too realistic stereo room emulation to a more trip-tastic mono style for our mono snare. That's the reverb. Now let's do the rest of the lo-fi sound. To dirty up our drums, let's add a pulverizer effect to our signal chain by dragging it into our rack underneath Kong. I'll modify the default preset, dialing back a bit of the squash, turning down the dirt, backing off the low-pass filter just a bit, and minimizing the peak. And let's also make our loop sound like a vinyl sample by thinning out the drums using a filter on Kong's Master Effects section. We'll set it to high pass, turn down the resonance, and set it to a low frequency so it's just cutting off the big woofy frequencies in our sound. Last but not least, let's add an Audiomatic to our signal for some crackles and pops. We'll dial the wet-dry balance to a tasteful but audible amount. There you go. Lo-fi, trashy, big sounds. There's only one issue. The snare drum is big, dark, and epic, but I can tell that it will get tiresome to have that thing blasting off twice every bar. A classic trip-hop workaround to this very issue is to have two snare drums, one epic, one crisp. For this next snare, let's start with this absolute sample in the Kong folder. To make that even crisper, let's shorten the decay on the sample. I really like the side stick clicky quality to this drum. In fact, let's enhance that even more with another layer. I'll search the factory sound bank because I know the Bomb Squad has a side stick sample that'll probably help. There it is. In addition to adjusting the volume of each sample layer, we can also adjust the pitch of each layer too. Let's make a piccolo snare sound by pushing the absolute sample up in pitch and pushing its volume up in the mix. To give our crisp snare a little more grit, let's add one of Kong's effects on Effects 1. The overdrive will saturate our snare nicely, but too much and our snare loses its attack, so let's pull down the size and dial back the drive. To help enhance our crisp attack even more, let's add a compressor on Effects 2. Let's also send a little bit of this snare to our bus effects reverb. Without these effects, our snare is too sterile. With them on, it's just enough to gel with the rest of our kit. Now we're ready to program our beat. Trip-hop's soul often comes from fairly steady elements mixed with a busy kick drum. So let's draw in the steady elements. Ride cymbals on the upbeats, a note to trigger our shaker loop at the top of the bar, and snare drums on 2 and 4. But instead of the same snare drum each time, let's use our epic snare drum on beat 2 and our side stick on beat 4. And now the kick drum. In trip-hop, that's where most of the magic happens in the groove. A totally basic kick drum pattern will play on beats 1 and 3, but as you can hear, there is nothing trippy nor hoppy about this beat. It's the 16th notes surrounding these beats where our kick really shines. So let's add a few more kicks on the 16th notes leading into beats 2, 3, and 4. And on beat 3, let's also toss in an extra kick after the beat. Okay, well, we've programmed our pattern and we've designed an epic drum kit sound, so why does our beat still suck? The answer lies in what is probably the most important part of trip-hop, the feel. Trip-hop has a very pronounced shuffle feel. So let's rescue our beat by routing our sequencer lane to the Groove Mixer's A1 channel and opening up the Groove Mixer to load a good shuffle feel. The MPC grooves are classics, so let's load a fairly heavy 65% shuffle. Way better. Let's duplicate this loop and bring in our other instruments. Remember those tricks we did back in the very beginning by dropping out the loop and stuttering the beat? Well, we can do the same things here. First, by muting our mixer channel, and I can program any pattern variations I want to my beat to give it that stuttered feel. So you can see, there's two ways we can make trip-hop drums. Using loops for a quick and traditional method, or customizing our own kit and using plenty of sound design tricks to arrive ultimately at the same destination. Sure, This second method gives you way more control, and it might be the right method for your music. But just because something is complex doesn't always mean it's better. I can think of plenty of cases where the loop method is the better choice, but the beauty is that's up to you to decide. So good luck, and I'll see you here for another tutorial.